What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another iteration of the guided scripting series. Today we are going to be going over data stores, okay? Now, in the previous video I had somebody ask if I could make a tutorial on how to do a game such as Murder Mystery 2 from Roblox. And so I'm going to be replicating that exact thing, or the exact sort of game concept in the rest of the series. We're going to be implementing some concepts. I'm not going to create the full game or anything like that, but we are going to be implementing concepts. So basically, in today's series, when we're going to be going over data storage, I will be sort of building it with the intentions of it working in a sort of murder mystery type of situation, okay? So, first and foremost, what are data stores? Basically, simply put, data stores are the way that you're going to be storing any sort of data about the game, about your players, so that the next time the game loads in, you can just grab that data and reload it. A simple example would be the coins inside of Murder Mystery 2. If you want to be able to store the coins that a player has collected and then load them in the next save, then you're going to be using data stores for that. A more complicated example would be a game that I'm developing currently on Polytoria called Polyville. It is a Bloxburg-inspired type of roleplay game, and I'm going to be needing to store the builds that players have created. So essentially, you have the option to build your own plots, build your own house, create it, and then it'll automatically save. The next time you load into your game, you can load that exact same store, and it will just automatically load you into that. This requires saving the exact position of every single part relative to its position on the plot, and it's very complicated, but it uses tables. And I'm going to be walking you through everything today on how to use data stores so you can possibly create something the exact same. So the first thing you guys want to go ahead and do is when you're inside of the Polytoria creator, you want to go ahead and click on script service, and you want to just go ahead and insert a new script. Another thing I should add is if you guys have not watched any of the previous videos and you're a complete beginner to scripting, you should definitely watch those first. They are quite short, they're probably about like 30-40 minutes altogether, but they will give you all the tools that you need to be able to continue, because from now on and in the future videos, they're all going to be a little bit more advanced. So I'm going to go ahead and name this one Data Manager in the bottom right, and then we're going to go ahead and insert another script, but this time it's going to be a module script, and I will show you guys why in just a moment. And then I'm going to rename this other one to be Data Handler. Alright, so we've got Data Handler and we've got Data Manager. We're just going to go ahead and double click on both of them to open them up in VS Code. My patience is gone. Window catcher. Alright, we're in VS Code, and again, if you haven't watched the other videos, just make sure you've got your environment set up properly. But we're gonna go ahead and go into the data handler first. Actually, no, sorry. We're gonna go into the data manager first. Now, if you recall, our data manager script was a module script, and essentially what module scripts are is they're specialized scripts that allow you to store data that other scripts can then access in the future. Currently, there is an issue with module scripts inside of Polytoria, so you are not able to actually edit any data that's inside of it. You can only retrieve it, but that's okay. For our purpose, that's going to be completely fine. And I mean, even for more complicated games like the one I'm developing, Polyville, I have managed to make it work with an arguably ugly method, but it works very well. But again, we're not going to be talking about that today. So to write a module script, first you want to define a table, okay? So we're going to go ahead and say table local, I'm going to call it data manager is equal to, and then we're just going to go ahead and open a blank table up like this. And inside of this is where we create a bunch of different methods. So our first method is going to go ahead and be the data manager. So we're going to open it. So we're going to refer to our table, and we're going to say dot, and we're going to call it, sorry, make sure you add function at the start of it, obviously, because we're defining a method within this. We're defining a function within our module script. Say function, we're going to refer to our data manager table, because we're going to add the method inside of the table so that other scripts can access it. And then we're going to say data manager dot, and let's call it get default values. Open the brackets up. This is where you would put any parameters in. So, for example, let's see. If you wanted certain players to start with more coins than others, then in here you could enter in special player, or like is special player or whatever. And then within your scripts you could say if is special player, and then you could define, you know, higher values for the coins or whatever, but we're not going to be using this for today. We're going to go ahead and say return, and we're just going to go ahead and press end down here. So this is our function, get default values. whenever this function is called, it's just going to go ahead and return whatever's inside of here. And we're going to go ahead and return a table, okay? So, what's this table going to have? It's going to have all the values that we want the players to start with by default the first time they join the game. For example, if we wanted the player to start with a bunch of coins, we could add the coins onto this table. So, coins, 250 coins. Let's say we wanted them to start with 0 XP. Let's say we wanted them to start on level 1. Let's say we wanted them to have an empty inventory. So we'll say inventory is equal to, or let's say we wanted them to start with a knife. So the way we're actually going to go ahead and do this is, I don't know how Murder Mystery does it. I'm not going to lie, I haven't played the game in a very long time. But we're going to go ahead and define primary. So primaries, we're going to define secondaries. Oh, no, I understand now. They've got knives and they've got guns, right? If you're a sheriff, if you're the murderer, right? So then we're gonna go ahead and say that they start with the default knife. So let's say they've got default, and then let's say they've got the default gun too, right? Something like that. We may refine this in future iterations, but just for now we're gonna go ahead and have it as that. And then, I mean, what else do they have in Murder Mystery? We've got skins, right? So skins will be an empty table, and this is gonna be the default values that every player starts with. And we could also have like the premium subscription that they have on that game. And yeah, so basically, let me just walk you through this one more time. I'm gonna try and do this. I don't want to spend too much time on just this section because this is quite irrelevant actually for the topic of discussion. But we are defining our table for our module script. Then we're defining our method over here. And all this is going to do is whenever somebody says data manager.get default values, whenever somebody calls this, it's just going to return the default values, the starting values. So local starting values is equal to this. And then whenever we print starting values, it's going to go ahead and print out our table of coins, of XP, of level, of inventory, of skins, of premium, right? And then all their values as well. And yeah, so go ahead and write this. I would say, oh yeah, for the purpose of learning, I would say that you should make sure that you don't just copy what I'm writing as I'm writing it. I would say watch the video, watch me do it, and then when I'm done writing a function, for example, I'm done writing something, then you can pause the video and then from memory write it again, because you'll learn a lot quicker that way. And also have some sort of game idea in your mind. Pick some sort of simple game concept, such as, I don't know, like a paintball game, for example, some basic shooters, some tycoon, some obby concept that you like or you've thought of. And then everything that I'm writing, you should modify to fit your own game scheme, because for one, by the end, you're gonna have your first game. It's gonna be super cool, right? But second of all, you're actually going to be learning how to actually apply this rather than just copying everything that I'm writing, right? But yeah, so now we're going to go ahead and save this, and we could, in theory, just close. Oh, no, we couldn't. We have to return data manager. And essentially all this does is whenever somebody calls our module script, it's going to return the data manager so that they're actually able to access all of these methods, right? In data manager as well, you're also going to have a bunch of other stuff, such as if we wanted to say function data manager dot get item prices, for example. In here, we could have a bunch of item prices so that whenever somebody tries to purchase something in game, we are comparing the value of the price to we're comparing the value of the coins that they've got stored to our table of prices, to ensure that they can't just cheat and, you know, get items for free. So for example, we could say return like knife, super knife or something is equal to 100 coins, or super gun is equal to 500 coins, for example. Or for example, we could even have this in a table. Super knife is equal to like 200 or whatever. I don't know. You get the idea. And then you can have the same thing for guns down here, right? Probably not gonna implement this, but we will in a future video. So yeah, you know what? We'll have it in a future video, so we might as well keep it on here. Actually no, I'm gonna rewrite this in the future video whenever we do it. In fact, as I'm looking at this, a better way to write the inventory might be to do something such as default is equal to true. And then down here we could have default is equal to true. And then this way in the future you could say add some other ones. So like, I don't know, like a karambit is equal to false. And you can have like a galak is equal to false. And the reason we could write it this way, obviously by the end you're gonna have like a bunch of different guns just listed on here. But the reason we're doing it this way is because in the future, if we wanted to access the inventory and if we wanted to check if somebody had a certain gun or a certain knife, instead of looping through it, instead of saying something like for in inventory, for example, for our value, okay, so we'll say for items in, we'll do I pairs inventory, and instead of checking if item, or we'll say item, just to make it, it's all semantic really, but for item in inventory, or sorry, inventory.knives would be the better way to look at it. But you can see that here we would have to loop through everything. For one, it can be quite slow. That's not really the main issue though, it's just quite annoying. Whereas on the other hand, with this setup, all we have to say is a check for if inventory.knives.default is equal to true, right? You can see the sort of difference between both of these. It's not huge, but this is a lot cleaner, and it also probably is a lot easier to manage. You don't want to have a bunch of different strings inside of it. That would just get quite annoying. So just go ahead and you write it this way, and it will probably be a lot better for you. But anyways, we spent a lot of time on that section, so I'm just going to go into the data handler. So, data stores in Roblox, in Roblox work a lot differently to data stores in Polytoria, but the general concept is the exact same, okay? So we're going to first go ahead and define our data store. Or actually, first of all, no, we're going to go ahead and define our data manager. So we're going to say local data manager is equal to require, and then we're going to go ahead and do script, or we're going to go ahead and go game and script service data manager, okay? You could do script.parent.data manager, but this is again just cleaner. Yeah, we're just indexing the game, we're getting the script service, and then we're gonna get a data manager script inside of it, okay? I never did you. Now the way I typically handle data stores is I will have a version defined at the top of my data handler. So I'll have something like local data version is equal to, and then I'll name it something like version 1 or whatever, right? And you'll see why in a second, because now when we go down here and we're going to create a function, we're going to create a function, and we're going to go ahead and call it, like get or initialize data in it, whatever you want to call it. The way that we get data storage or data stores is we say local, let's say player data is equal to data store. This is just a static class inside of Polytoria. Get data store, and then we're gonna go, and this is the method to get the data store. And then the parameters that we need is the data storage name. So this is the reason we had data version at the top. So now we can say data version ... and then player .user ID, for example. I think it's supposed to be a capital D over here with user ID, but obviously player isn't defined, so we're going to go ahead and do player at the top here as a parameter to our function, and then down here we're simply going to call this function with game players .player added connect function, or sorry, not connect function, we're just going to connect data in it, and we're going to put in player as a parameter into here. Oh, sorry, I'm lying, you don't even need to put in player as a parameter. This will automatically pass player as a parameter, so basically you just connect to this function and data in it, it'll automatically grab the player from this, okay? And so yeah, if you were to join the game right now, it would try and find the data for this player. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is do while player data dot loading do, and then we're going to go ahead and say wait. All this is going to do is while the player data is still loading, it's going to go ahead and wait. And then once it's done loading, it's going to run the rest of its code. There is also, I believe, a method you can use of player data dot loaded. But I'm going to go ahead and just use this because this is what I'm familiar with, and I don't really want to concatenate the rest of our code inside of an if statement. So we've got our player data. What do we do with it now? Well, the problem is if a new player joins, they're not going to have these default values stored onto their data storage, right? So we want to have some sort of system that automatically applies these default values, right? That's the whole point of us creating this entire function, or method, whatever. So next thing is we're gonna want to check if the player already has data stored on their account, right? If they're a new player, they're not gonna have any data. So the way I like to do this is, okay, so essentially with data stores in Polytoria, you cannot store tables. So you're gonna have to convert it to JSON. And I'll show you guys how to do that in a moment. This is the part that a lot of people get messed up. But the way that we're gonna do this is we're actually gonna store a table inside of our data store, and then that table is going to contain all of our data. So it's the exact same as having this, for example, this thing right here. And we're going to have something called main data as our table. Don't write this, I'm just going to show you guys the whole setup. So we're going to have something like main data, and then in here is where we're going to have all of this. And then we basically just take main data, and then we convert main data into JSON format, which we can then store in our database, okay? So, what does that look like? Well, first, we want to check if the player already has data, right? So we say, so the way that we check if the player already has data is we say, so we say player data, and then we use this method to basically get the data. We say get. In here, we say main data, that's what we're going to call our table that I just described before. And then the two parameters is the name of whatever you're trying to, the data, whatever you're trying to get from the data storage, and then the callback function. So it's going to be function. The first parameter is value, success, error. This is our function, okay? So what's happening here is we're referencing our player data that we just got from the data storage. We're gonna want to get some sort of value, so we're gonna get the main data table, right? And then the callback function is essentially what happens once we've got it. So the initial parameter is gonna be the value. So if we get it successfully, then value is gonna be equal to our main data table that we created before, right? So the second one is gonna be success. So basically what we can say is, if not success, and essentially what this is gonna do is, if we didn't successfully grab the data of the player, then we're just going to go ahead and print the error. And if we did get it successfully, then we can start loading the data. The error is most likely going to be that the player doesn't have any data stored on their account, right? But sometimes in very niche cases, you're going to have an error that is unrelated to whether the player has data stored or not. So the way we differentiate between them is we're not going to print it, right? You can do this for debugging, for testing the game or whatever, but we're going to actually say, if not success and error is not equal to, and then the actual text is no value for key main data in data store space ... data version ... player user ID, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Or sorry, player user ID. I believe this is the thing. So basically, what we're saying here is, whenever you join the game and you haven't had any data yet stored, obviously main data is not going to exist. So the moment we try to get it, it's gonna return this error. So what we are trying to say is, okay, well, if we didn't successfully get the data and the error is not equal to this, then we can print the error, okay? Because then we know the error is completely unrelated to whether the player has data or not, and the game somehow broke. And essentially, if we don't have any data, the game will return something like this. In data store, and it'll be something like version 1 user ID, right? But yeah, so we're not gonna have something like that in there. We're just gonna have something like this that will check whether the error was related to whether the player had data or not. If it is not, we print the error, and if it is, then we can continue with this, right? So then we say, so inside of this else, we're gonna go ahead and define a variable, and we're gonna call it local active data. And we're not going to give it a value. And then below it, we're going to go ahead and say, if value is equal to nil, then and then we're gonna have an else as well. So basically we're saying the value of the data, right? If the value of the data is nil, if it's empty, if the player didn't have any data previously, then we're gonna go ahead and say active data is equal to, and we're gonna say data manager dot get default values, was it that we called it? Get default values, that's correct. And yeah, then we can just leave it at that. In the else statement, so basically we're saying if the player doesn't already have any data stored, then we're just going to go ahead and assign the default values to them, right? Pretty self-explanatory. In the else, we're going to go ahead and say if value, or if type value is equal to string, active data is equal to JSON.parse, and it's going to be our active data, okay? So, or we could call it raw data if you wanted to differentiate better, so we could say local raw data is equal to that. And over here it can be something like local raw data. But, you know, for simplicity, we're just going to go ahead and just call it the same thing. Active data is equal to that, okay? So by the end of this, we're going to go ahead and have, or actually, yeah, have it as this. In here, we can create another variable, call it local raw data. In here, we define raw data to be JSON.parse active data. Or actually, okay, sorry, I know I'm switching up a lot. This, we can go ahead and say, yeah, okay, yeah. You know what, just ignore me. Raw data is equal to JSON.parse raw data. In here, we say raw data is equal to JSON.parse active data, right? And basically, all this is doing is, because, you know, I remember previously I said you cannot put tables into Datastore. You have to convert them into JSON formats. All we're doing here is we're converting them from JSON back to a table format so that we can use them better. Because JSON is just a string. It's just going to be a string of our data, right? We want this to be into the actual table format so that we can actually utilize it properly, right? Now, previously I had issues with the JSON.parse feature. This is not supposed to be capital. I had a previous issue with well, this whole usage here. I'm gonna see if in this video it works properly. If it does not, I will show you guys the workaround that I used. It is quite complicated. I will not be explaining how it works because, for one, this shouldn't even be a problem, so I don't think it will be a problem in future versions of the creator. And second of all, it is too complicated for me to explain to you guys. But I mean, if you wanted me to explain it, then you can leave a comment down below, or you can message me on Discord, and I would be happy to give you guys a rundown of how it all works. But yeah, we're just gonna assume that this will work for now, and because it should really work. And so yeah, this is just all you want to do for this. This will grab the data. If it doesn't already exist, then it will just assign the default values to it, and boom, we've initialized the data, okay? So you cannot edit or modify tables that are inside of a module script, right? I mentioned that previously, and because of that, that's quite annoying, right? It's quite an issue. The only two workarounds that we truly have that I was able to think of is using global variables for our data, so that any script in the game can access them via the global variables, but I didn't really like that workaround either. So instead, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and store the data on the actual player, okay? So that whenever we want to access certain data, we just reference it to the player, and then we can access that data that way. And the way that I was able to do this is saying local player stored data, or local current data, is equal to instance.new. Going to be a string value, and it's going to be inside of the actual player, so it's going to be player. And then down here we're going to say current data dot value is going to be equal to our raw data dot serialize JSON dot serialize raw data. And in theory, you don't actually need to parse it here. I kind of just do this because it's a habit I have of where I want to first be able to access the actual table. But in theory, if you wanted to just go ahead and do this, then you could probably actually just leave it like that. This would probably just this would have been much cleaner for me to do, actually. Yeah. Yeah, this is probably just the better way to do it, actually. And if you wanted to do it that way, then you could just set the value to be equal to act data. The only reason I had it with the other version before is because that's that's required for the method that I will be using if this doesn't work. But for now, let's just go ahead and do it this way. So again, we're grabbing the data. If it fails for any other reason other than the fact that they don't already have data, then we will print the error out. This is supposed to be a lowercase d. We will print the error out. Otherwise, if it works, as in we grab the data, then we check if the data is empty, e.g. they don't have any data already. If they don't have any data, we'll set active data to be equal to the default values. And if they do, we're actually going to set this to value. We can get rid of this variable because we already have the value variable up there. And then down here, we just pass it into there. So if it's empty, then we're going to set it into the default values. If it is not empty, then that means they already have data. And then we can just go ahead and straight away put it into this new string value that we just created. And that is pretty much it, guys. What I like to do after this is have a separate function somewhere. So, like for example, another module script somewhere that has like data manager dot initialize, function. For example, initialize game. I wouldn't have this in the data manager module script. It'd be a different one. But for example, it'd be something like whatever the, or like we don't even have to return anything. In here, we could just have like some sort of function that like initializes the game, right? Whatever that might be for you. So yeah, in here then we could sort of call data manager dot initialize game, was it? Initialize game. And then we could pass player through here. So that in here now, we can say player, and then here we could then access this string value. We should give it a name, current data.name is equal to current data. And then here we could have current data player.current data, and we could say local current data is equal to player.current data. But then we need to go ahead and JSON.parse it. It's going to be JSON.serialize, and boom. Actually, a better way to do it would be to do find child current data, making sure that you obviously put it into whatever it's called, a string, because it's a string, right? You're getting the name of it. So yeah, so this is basically the way that you would get a player data. So we are getting the data storage. We're waiting for it to load, then we're going to try and see if it already has any data inside of it. If it does not, then we assign default values. If it's an error for some reason, we print the error, and otherwise we go ahead and assign the default values, or we just go ahead and create the string value. And what this allows us to do is it allows us to store the data on the player, and in the future we can go ahead and grab the data from the player with JSON.serialize, right? This will convert it from that string format into our normal table format so that we can in the future reference it to it, right? Again, you don't actually need to do initialize game. You can just go ahead and do, like, if this was like a regular script, for example, you could just go ahead and do game players, for example, if this was like sorry, I accidentally just closed my Streamlabs, but for example, if this was a local script, we could say game of players, local player, and then in here we could say find child, and then current data. We could even say, we could even just put this directly into JSON.serialize, so we could say JSON.serialize. I wouldn't recommend doing this. I would say check to make sure the current data exists first, but this, in theory, would return our main data table from the player, right? And we could say, this would return our main data table, and we could say, put this into like some sort of variable, local current data. This is just how you would use it, right? Local current data. Make sure you actually grab the value of it. So you've got this, but this will just return the string value instance that you just created. Make sure you go ahead and grab the value of it, because the value is what actually has the data, right? And then you can go ahead and local current data, and then this is what's going to return the actual table of it, right? Also, sorry, it's not serialize, it's parse. But yeah, basically JSON, this isn't in documentation, but JSON.parse is what's going to go ahead and converts a string into our data, and then JSON.serialize is what's going to go ahead and converts our table into the string, right? Just try and memorize that. But yeah, this is how you would go ahead and do that. You need to go ahead and parse the data, and then this is what's going to return the table, and then you can use the table. This right here is just a quick example of how I utilize this in my game. So we had our local data is equal to JSON.parse data string.value, the exact same thing that we had down over here. I made sure that the type of the data is equal to table, right? Because if it for some reason isn't, if it for some reason is not a table, then obviously you're gonna have problems with trying to access it in the future. This is just a little failsafe. Typically, it will be it will be a table anyway, so this isn't really necessary. It's just a safety measure. And so yeah, now we have the data, and then in here we can now access the data from the table by just simply doing data.houseData, for example. This is an entry from the table. I'm making sure that it exists. If it doesn't, then I'm doing this, and then this is where the rest of my code runs. But yeah, this is just to show you that this is how you really use it. This is another example of how I utilized it, right? So over here, after applying all these changes to the house data, I inserted this into our house data entry within our data table. And then down here, you can see we are, you can ignore this line, but we are basically serializing our data. And all this does is it goes ahead and turns it from our table format into our string format so that I can use it again in the future. And if I wanted to then save this, I didn't have to serialize it again, right? Okay, so now we have gone ahead and created our default values. We have retrieved the data. If it doesn't exist, then we have created a default data and we've now stored it on the player. Perfect. Now we can use the data and we can do whatever we want. But what if we want to go ahead and save the data once they leave, right? That's important, right? Can't get data if no data has been saved. So down here we say game players dot player removed connect a function, connect the function, and this is going to be save data, right? And then we just create another function. We say local function save data, and we need to make sure that we put the player in there as well. And then we're going to say local session data, for example, is going to be equal to player find child current data. So we're just going to go ahead and find this string value inside of the player, which has our data, right? Now, if you recall, the data over here, we never converted this to a table. In here, we simply just used the string, right? So this is always going to be a string, which means what we can do is we can say, well, we can, first of all, we have to go ahead and copy this to the top here, but we need to make sure that the session data exists. So if session data, and then we can say local player data is equal to this, right? This is just the line that we had before. We're retrieving the same data storage to ensure we save it at the same location, right? And then we can say player data, or we'll wait for it to load. We'll say player data set, and then we're just going to set main data, right? Main data is the table that we defined earlier in the video, right? The value that we want to put in, which is going to be our session data. And then it's going to have a function with success and error, right? And yeah, so in here, simply print. So if the player data was successfully saved, if success, then print successfully saved data. And if it didn't successfully save, then we can just go ahead and print that. And yeah, I mean, there's not much else to it. I mean, yeah, there's not much else to it. This is your entire function. If you wanted to return true or false or something like that, you can do that too. But yeah, I mean, that's the entire function, guys. But what I like to do actually is create another function down here, local function. I'm going to call it autosave, okay? And this is going to be an autosave function that will essentially do while true, and then we're going to go ahead and wait 60 seconds. Or yeah, we're going to wait 60 seconds, and then we're going to go ahead and do for player, for every player inside of game players, right? So for every player inside of the session. So for every player inside of the game, every 60 seconds, we're just going to go ahead and run the save data function. So save data, and we're going to go ahead and put in player. And then we're going to go ahead and spawn the function at the end here, autosave. And yeah, I mean, self-explanatory. It's going to save the player data every single minute for every single player in the game. You can change this to 120 seconds if you wanted to. Do whatever you want. But yeah. This is our entire data handler and our entire data manager script. Again, I tried to make this as like intricate as possible so that you guys could understand every aspect of it, but I also tried to make it as simple as possible. And this is the moment of truth to see if my 70 minutes of recording has paid off. We're gonna go ahead and see if this all ended up actually working. And if it doesn't, then I'll have to show you guys the more complicated version. At the bottom in this autosave script, we're just gonna go ahead and say print saved ... and then we're gonna go ahead and say player. We're gonna go ahead and say, actually no, we don't even need to do it in here. We'll say in our save data script, local coins is equal to, I'm just gonna go ahead and do player, or we're going to do json.parse session data .value. Oh yeah, also this needs to be .value over here. Make sure that you're saving the value, not the actual instance of it, right? But yeah, json.parse session data.value, and then we're gonna set coins equal to coins. That's okay, that's super complicated. Current data coins. Again, this is just how you would access the coins from the data. Or actually, we wouldn't even, you know, we're not even gonna do this. We're just gonna go ahead and straight up print current data. And basically every single time our data is saved, it will go ahead and print out the data that was saved, obviously, right? At the bottom here, we're just gonna change this to like 5 seconds, just so I don't have to wait for a minute. But yeah, let's just join the game and we will see what happens. Open up the console and we have an error. Okay, I believe the issue is because previously, if the data was empty, if the player didn't have any data, we were just assigning value to be the default table, right? But the problem is it's a table, and over here we're trying to assign it to a string value. So all you have to do over here is make sure that if we are grabbing the default data, we are serializing it into our string. Okay, but again, second try, moment of truth, should work now. There shouldn't be any problems. Again, this is going to be my live reaction. Open it up, and boom. Yeah, I mean, you can see we are successfully saving our data. Obviously, what we want to go ahead and make sure is we want to make sure that the data is actually saving the new data, right? So what we're going to go and do is we're going to, instead of just printing out the table, is serialize this. This will give us the, if I can actually spell serialize. Serialize. This will give us the string, so we can actually read the data in the console. But then also, we are gonna go ahead and say, let's say, every time it saves, okay, we're just gonna create a new function, say, add coins, local function, add coins. It's just gonna be player, not do, what am I saying? Local function, add coins player. It's gonna go ahead and grab the local player data, so it's gonna be local session data is equal to player dot find child. What did we call it again? Current data dot value, and this will be the table. No, it will not. This will be the table. And actually, now that I'm looking at it, you don't even need to serialize this. Don't need to serialize that. But yeah, parse, and then we're gonna go ahead and this is gonna be our player data as a table. And then all we have to say is session data dot coins is equal to session data dot coins plus, let's say 10 or something like that. And then we're gonna go ahead and do session data. How are we gonna do this? We're gonna go ahead and say grab this, and we're just gonna go ahead and change this to be our new session data. So we're gonna go ahead and do session. We're gonna do JSON.serialize session data. Okay. Again, simple script. We're grabbing the data from the player that's stored on the player, changing it to a table. We're changing the value of the coins from the table to add 10, and then we're going to change the data that's stored on the player to our new data, but in the string format, right? And basically every single time we save it, before we save it, we're just going to go ahead and, after we save it, we'll say add coins for player. And yeah, so basically this is just a simple script to basically just test that saving works. But yeah, let's go ahead and test it out. Okay, so this should be our final time testing this. Actually, no, we do need to leave the game and rejoin to test it actually works, but okay. Okay, so that was my fear. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to do the more complicated version. Again, I hope they fix this in the future. In the future, everything that we just wrote typically would work out. So depending on when you're watching this, you might be able to just copy this and utilize this. But if you get the same issues, if you're watching this probably within like the next few months, you'll probably have to do the more complicated version, okay? Okay, so guys, if you encounter the same issue, go ahead and just call out, like, I'm gonna go ahead and, yeah, I'll leave a link in the description to where you can go ahead and copy this. But this is just a base64 encode and decode module script, so just make it a module script. You can paste this in, put it inside of your script service again. You can read through this and, you know, understand it yourself. But yeah, we have to utilize this in order to make this work, otherwise it is just not going to work. But again, this is more of a temporary solution until they fix it. So first of all, go down to your save, and down here, you're just going to go ahead and do... Actually, no, first we want to go ahead and add it, obviously, so it's going to be local base64 is equal to be require script service base64. And then go down to your save data, and you're going to go ahead and do data to save, local data to save is equal to base64.encode. And you're going to go ahead and slap this into here, and then data to save is the one that you're actually going to be passing into there. Make sure it's a lowercase e, because that's the one, yeah, we're using a lowercase e in there. So this is pretty simple. The one that's a little more difficult is gonna be the initialize one. Okay, so first of all, down here, we're gonna be using JSON.serialize on the value. First and foremost, this is gonna be necessary now. Or rather, you can do a little check, say if type value is not equal to string, then value is equal to JSON.serialize value. Or you can check if it's a table. I guess that's probably a cleaner way to go about it. And then you can go ahead and patch value into there. But this is where we're gonna have to run into some issues here. We're gonna go ahead and remove the JSON.serialize from here since we're doing it down there. And we're gonna have an else in here, okay? Okay, so this is gonna be our logic that occurs if we already have data, okay? So we're going to check to make sure it is a string first of all. If type of value is a string, then we can run all this. We're going to have a little fallback on here. So we're going to call it active data. Actually, we don't even need to change the variable name. We'll just call it values equal to data manager dot get default values. And if it is a string, then we are going to go ahead and decode it, okay? So I'm going to call it local decoded is equal to, I believe, base64.decode value. And then we're going to go ahead and gsub it for, again, I will leave all of this, where's the button? I like it. I'll leave all of this in the description for you guys to just go ahead and copy. And if you need any like help on how to actually use this or how to understand this, you can leave a comment down below. I might make a video on this. But just go ahead and copy this, or copy it from the description. I'll leave all of the project files in my Discord. So if you want to just join the Discord in the description, then you can just go ahead and download the game file for this. But we'll call it active data. is equal to local active. I mean, do we want to create a new one? I don't know if it's going to be too complicated for you guys to follow, but we're going to use the same variable, I think. This is supposed to be decoded. Value is equal to, and then we will JSON dot parse are decoded. And yeah, so this should work fine. I think we also should have like a little fallback function. We'll call it local raw data, or just raw, I guess. Should work. And we'll call it value. We'll do the G sub again. Yeah, so if that, then this, else, and then we'll say value is equal to data manager dot get default stats. Why are we getting errors? Expected and found else. Oh, because we need to end this if statement here. So I think this all looks fine. But yeah, I mean, I wish we didn't have to do it this way, but have to, and it should work now, fingers crossed. Okay, so I had some problems with doing this. So what I've just done is I've serialized it straight away when we are applying it. I think it might be because it's supposed to do a lowercase t for table, maybe. But yeah, I'm not sure. So we're just gonna go ahead and delete all of this and serialize it as soon as we do that. But if you will feast your eyes upon this greatness, you will see. First of all, if you zoom in over here, the coins are going up as we are giving it time, and it's saving the data every single time. But you know, let's just go ahead and leave the game and test to ensure that it actually is saving the data. So I'm going to go ahead and do this all in one take. Yeah, we're going to load into the game, see if it saves. Remember, the original value was 250. So if it didn't save, then we will start at 250 again. But if it did save, it'll be like 300 or 400, whatever it was that we ended at. And you'll see right there, we started at 390, 400, 410, 420. And it's saving everything, right? And we can utilize this as well. So really quickly, I've changed the print over here. So what we're doing is we're parsing it into a table. So before we were just printing out the string, right? That's what you guys saw before. But now we're going to change this into an actual table. So that we can now do is say player has, and then we can go ahead and refer to the amount of coins in the actual table, right? So again, we're just going to load into the game right now, and you'll see in the print statement, it is telling us how many coins we have. I should have probably put it in a little space here. But I mean, yeah, you can see it works perfectly fine. It's telling us how many coins we have. So yeah, guys, that is exactly how you utilize data stores in Roblox. That is how you utilize data stores in Polytoria. And how you can save them, how you can load them, how you can utilize them. You can see that we were able to store tables, we were able to store whatever values we wanted with no problems, no errors, whatever. And yeah, I mean, this is like completely functional now. You can modify this to have whatever values you want, like you guys saw before, if I pull it up one more time. So yeah, if I just show you guys this script from my other game that I'm working on, you will see that I'm able to build objects in my game. So like in Bloxburg, for example, you can, you know, build your own houses or whatever, and you can save the data, and the next time you load in and you load your plots, it'll automatically load in the same stuff. The exact same thing I'm doing here, and you can see that I'm saving that into the data store. I think it probably makes a lot more sense if I actually demonstrate this inside of Polyville. But yeah, I mean, you guys can see I think I built something, or I just put like a bunch of parts down, and you'll see they load in as soon as we load into the game. Any second now. Any second now. There you go. You can see that's parts that we previously had placed down, and they saved. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I hope it was informative enough. I don't know how long this is going to be because I've been recording for almost 2 hours, just shy of 2 hours. I'm going to try and cut this down as much as I can to maybe 20-30 minutes. I don't know. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I don't know how many videos I'm going to be uploading a week because, you know, longer videos like this take longer to edit. They take longer to record. I'm going to try and do maybe 2 or 3 a week. If you guys, I mean, if I run out of ideas, obviously that won't work anymore. But for now, I've got a few ideas of what I'm going to do, especially for this week. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you guys like the video. It helps a lot with the engagement so other people can find the video. And if you like this type of content, subscribe. Obviously don't subscribe if you're not going to watch any other videos. But if you want to be informed whenever I do upload another video like this, then you can subscribe. If you're interested in seeing Polyville in the future, which is just a Bloxburg type game, then I will be uploading some videos on this account as well, on that, so if you want to get game updates, you can do that. Join the Discord in the link in the description if you wanted to go ahead and, you know, ask me any questions or whatever. And also leave suggestions in the comment section below for anything you would like to see in the future, guys. But yeah, that has been the 5th video to the guided scripting series. And I hope to see you guys in the future videos. Take care, guys. Peace out.